Have you ever felt uneasy while looking at a religious image that was supposed to bring peace? Have you ever prayed before a statue of Mary and felt nothing? Padre Pio, the mystic priest tormented by demons and deeply united with the Virgin, left us a chilling warning. Some images of Mary don't come from heaven, so they open doors to darkness. The enemy no longer breaks statues, he redesigns them. No longer does he burn the images of saints, he reshapes them into lifeless ornaments. Padre Pio understood this shift deeply. He saw that in modern times, evil had become more sophisticated. It no longer attacks faith head-on. Instead, it cloaks itself in the appearance of holiness. Religious images, once born out of prayer and reverence, are now mass-produced without intention, without blessing, without soul. What once stood as a window to heaven can now become a subtle mask behind which darkness hides. Padre Pio encountered this spiritual distortion often. He was known to refuse to bless certain statues brought to him by the faithful. These were not random rejections. They came from a place of deep spiritual discernment. He would see something others couldn't: the absence of grace, the lack of true presence. To the untrained eye, the images looked beautiful, even devout, but to Padre Pio, they were hollow. The Virgin's face in these images was either too theatrical, too sensual, or simply too empty. There was no depth in the eyes, no maternal tenderness, no echo of heaven. The enemy knows that millions love the Virgin Mary, and so he no longer tries to erase her from our homes. Instead, he offers an imitation, a version of Mary that is sanitized of spiritual power, a decorative figure with no intercession. This counterfeit doesn't inspire prayer. It distracts from it. It doesn't bless a space. It neutralizes it. And perhaps worse, it slowly desensitizes the soul. A person may kneel before such an image for weeks, even months, not realizing why their prayer life is growing dry, why silence has become heavy instead of peaceful, why the room where they used to pray now feels spiritually flat. This is what Padre Pio called the spiritual counterfeiting of the sacred. It is one of the enemy's most dangerous tactics, not because it is violent, but because it is convincing. A false image of Mary doesn't shock or disturb. It looks acceptable, harmless, even lovely. That's why it works. It bypasses suspicion, and slowly it replaces devotion with decoration, holiness with sentimentality, grace with imitation. Padre Pio stood against this quietly but firmly, and he warned us. Not every image labeled Catholic was made to glorify God. Some were made to confuse. Some were made to disarm. Some, tragically, were made to deceive. When a spiritually false image enters a home, its effect is rarely immediate or dramatic. It begins quietly, almost invisibly, like a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The room where it stands starts to feel different, not haunted or frightening, but strangely heavy. Over time, the change deepens. Prayer becomes more difficult. Moments of silence feel uncomfortable. Family members grow more irritable, more impatient with one another. Children may struggle with restlessness, nightmares, or sudden aversions to certain corners of the house. None of this seems directly linked to the image, and that is precisely why the danger is so effective. Padre Pio warned that such objects don't necessarily bring curses. They bring confusion. They introduce a kind of spiritual static. Instead of being a channel for grace, the image becomes an obstacle. It interferes with recollection, with inner stillness. It draws the eyes, but not the soul. People may spend weeks praying in front of such an image, not realizing that the dryness they feel, the emptiness during the rosary, the wandering of the mind, might be connected to what is watching them from the shelf or the wall. In many cases, these images were never created as acts of faith. They were designed to sell, to appeal, to decorate. The artist may have had no connection to Mary, no understanding of her role in the church, no sense of the sacred. Some may even have added symbols or design elements with roots in ideologies opposed to Christianity. When such an object is placed in a home, it carries that intention with it. Padre Pio taught that the spiritual signature of the Creator leaves a mark on the object, and when that signature is distorted, the object becomes spiritually distorted as well. The consequences may be subtle: a loss of spiritual appetite, tension in relationships, a heaviness in the heart, or they may be more pronounced: difficulty sleeping, increased anxiety, or a sense that prayer no longer brings peace. These are not superstitions, they are signs of spiritual imbalance, and when the source remains unidentified, the symptoms persist. People may seek therapy, new routines, distractions, when the root of the problem is sitting silently in the middle of their prayer space. Padre Pio offered the faithful simple but profound ways to recognize whether an image of the Virgin Mary is spiritually authentic or subtly false. The first sign is found not in the eyes or posture of the image, but in the interior response it provokes. When someone kneels before an image of Mary, the heart should be lifted. If instead there is distraction, coldness, or inner resistance to prayer, that reaction must be taken seriously. Authentic sacred images create space for recollection. They invite silence, awe, and tenderness. If an image consistently scatters thoughts or creates unease, it may not be spiritually clean, regardless of how beautiful it appears. The second way to discern a counterfeit is to examine the visual details with spiritual eyes. Padre Pio warned of hidden symbols that often go unnoticed: 5-pointed stars subtly placed, inverted floral patterns, serpents worked into decoration, or hand gestures not found in Christian iconography. These symbols are not harmless. They reflect ideologies or intentions foreign to the Church. Even slight deviations in posture can carry meaning. The Virgin Mary has always been represented with humility, modesty, and grace. When an image portrays her in exaggerated or sensual ways, with soft gazes or suggestive stances, it fails to reflect her heavenly purity. The Church has preserved a visual tradition for centuries, and when that tradition is broken, the spirit of the image is often broken as well. The third method of discernment lies in understanding the origin and purpose of the image. Padre Pio emphasized that the soul of the artist passes into the work. If the artist had no faith, or worse, rejected the faith, that spirit can cling to what was created. Mass-produced images made for profit, without reverence or blessing, often lack the spiritual substance that true icons carry. Authentic images are typically born from devotion, from prayer, from a desire to honor God. Before placing any image in the home, it matters to ask, where did this come from? Was it blessed? Was it made by hands that honored Mary? These questions are not about aesthetics, but about spiritual safety. Padre Pio's guidance was not to breed suspicion, but to form discernment so that the home may remain a place of peace and not unknowingly welcome an imitation that clouds the light. When a person suspects that an image of the Virgin Mary in their home may be spiritually compromised, Padre Pio's counsel is clear and firm. Act without delay, but with reverence. The first step is to pause and pray before the image, sincerely asking God for clarity. If the heart feels restless, if peace does not come, or if something within resists prayer in its presence, the image should not remain in a place of devotion. Padre Pio warned that spiritual discernment often begins with interior discomfort. That unrest is not to be dismissed, but regarded as a signal of the soul's sensitivity to unseen realities. Once an image is identified as spiritually suspicious or disturbing, it should never be gifted, sold, or passed on to others. Doing so risks extending the harm. Instead, the object should be removed respectfully and disposed of in a way that breaks its influence. Padre Pio encouraged the faithful to burn or bury such images, always accompanying the act with prayer. The goal is not to treat the image with contempt, but to spiritually neutralize anything impure that may cling to it. A short prayer of renunciation and purification should be spoken aloud, asking the Lord to close any spiritual door that may have been opened through the object's presence. After the image is removed, the home should be spiritually cleansed. This includes praying through each room, sprinkling holy water, and, if possible, inviting a priest to bless the home. Padre Pio believed deeply in the protective power of sacramentals, and he often reminded his spiritual children that holy water, blessed salt, and priestly blessings are not symbolic gestures. They are real shields in spiritual warfare. Every corner of the house should be reclaimed as sacred space, especially the area where the false image once stood. Once the space is cleared, it is vital to replace the discarded image with one that is known to be spiritually authentic. Traditional representations of the Virgin Mary, such as Our Lady of Fatima, Our Lady of Guadalupe, or icons tied to centuries of church devotion, carry a spiritual weight shaped by generations of prayer. The new image should be chosen with care, blessed by a priest, and introduced into the home with gratitude and reverence. The goal is not merely to decorate, but to restore spiritual balance, to invite light where shadow had lingered. Padre Pio knew that the home is not just a building, it is a spiritual vessel, and what fills it shapes the soul of the family who lives there. After the removal of a spiritually harmful image, Padre Pio urged that the home not be left empty, but be actively consecrated to the Virgin Mary through prayer. Spiritual cleansing is not just about getting rid of darkness, it is about inviting light. This begins with an act of intentional consecration, a spoken prayer in which the household is entrusted to Mary's care and authority. The prayer should be offered slowly, with sincerity, ideally while walking through the rooms, invoking her presence not only over the space, but over every person who dwells within it. Padre Pio emphasized that prayer spoken with faith has the power to transform an atmosphere, to restore peace, and to seal spiritual wounds. The act of consecration should include a clear petition for Mary to reveal anything in the home that does not honor her Son. Padre Pio believed that the Virgin, when invited, gently brings light to hidden things. The prayer should also ask for her to reclaim every corner of the house as a place of purity, to intercede for its protection, and to guide those within toward deeper holiness. These words are not a formula, but a spiritual offering. Accompanying the prayer with the use of blessed sacramentals, holy water, blessed salt, or a lit blessed candle deepens the act. As the prayer moves through the house, it becomes a procession of faith, and each room is touched by grace. Padre Pio often spoke of the power of the rosary in the home. After the consecration, it is especially meaningful to pray a decade of the rosary before the newly placed image of Mary, asking for her to dwell fully there. He also recommended that the faithful repeat this consecration annually or whenever spiritual disturbances return. The home, like the soul, needs regular renewal. The presence of holy images, the echo of prayer, and the memory of blessings together form a spiritual defense. When Mary is truly welcomed into a home, not just as a picture but as a mother, her peace begins to reign. Padre Pio knew that a consecrated house becomes more than a shelter. It becomes a refuge of light in a world of shadows. In today's world, spiritual deception has grown more subtle, and this is why Padre Pio's warning about false images is more urgent than ever. Faith is increasingly treated as an aesthetic or cultural expression rather than a sacred reality. Religious symbols are often reduced to decorations, stripped of their meaning and sold without discernment. As homes become filled with objects, Chosen for appearance rather than spiritual authenticity, the line between the sacred and the superficial begins to blur. Padre Pio understood that in such an environment, the enemy no longer needs to attack devotion openly. He only needs to distort it gently, quietly, until it no longer holds power. This manipulation is especially dangerous when it involves images of the Virgin Mary. Her role in spiritual protection is profound. Wherever her true image is honored, peace takes root and evil is pushed back. But when her image is falsified, emptied of reverence, altered in appearance, or infused with conflicting symbolism, it no longer guards the home. It becomes a spiritual void, or worse, a tool the enemy uses to quietly confuse, weaken, and discourage. Padre Pio saw this as a serious threat, especially in homes where faith was already fragile. What makes the danger so effective is how normal the false images appear. They do not frighten or shock, they blend in, but their influence works like a slow toxin, dulling the desire to pray, increasing division among family members, and eroding the sense of the sacred over time. Without realizing it, many people live in homes where the spiritual atmosphere has become heavy, not because of some dramatic sin, but because of what silently hangs on the wall or rests on a shelf. Padre Pio's concern was not just about bad art, it was about spiritual atmosphere. He believed that homes must be havens of prayer and purity, especially now, when the external world grows darker and more distracted. Every item placed in a home shapes its invisible tone. Every image, every word, every symbol participates in either grace or confusion. In such times, choosing a holy image is not a small matter. It is an act of spiritual warfare. It is a declaration of who is welcome in the house and who is not. And it is a way of anchoring one's family in truth at a time when truth is harder to find. Spiritual cleansing is not a single act, but an ongoing process of vigilance and devotion. Padre Pio encouraged the faithful to regularly review the religious items in their homes, not only for aesthetic reasons, but for spiritual clarity. The process begins with prayer, asking the Holy Spirit for discernment and courage to act. Every image, statue, or religious symbol should be examined carefully, not only in its appearance, but in its effect. Does it inspire silence, recollection, and love for God? Or does it leave the heart distracted, cold, or uneasy? If uncertainty arises, it is better to remove the item and seek spiritual counsel than to allow it to remain and possibly disturb the peace of the home. After removing questionable objects, the next step is blessing. Each room can be blessed with holy water, and the family should come together to pray for protection, consecration, and light. Padre Pio recommended the use of the rosary in this process, especially invoking the Virgin Mary to reclaim the home as a place of divine grace. Objects that are kept should be of known origin, made within the Church's tradition, and preferably blessed by a priest. The goal is not perfection, but purity of intention and spiritual safety. In the end, Padre Pio called every home to become a small sanctuary where Christ is welcomed and honored, where Mary is present not only in image but in spirit. In a time filled with spiritual confusion, he urged the faithful to act decisively, not with fear, but with faith. Now is the time to purify, to protect, and to proclaim with every object, every prayer, and every choice, this home belongs to heaven.